This is the Alden Report.
Today's episode is brought to you by FrontRowBenefits.com, connecting consumers and businesses with front row access to the greatest health insurance that the United States has to offer. Visit FrontRowBenefits.com. Folks, listen, if you're like me, if you own a business, if you have a family, or if you're an individual and you're looking for front row access to healthcare, maybe you're tired of your premiums going up. Maybe you don't want to pay those high deductibles anymore. Maybe you're tired of paying more and more for your monthly prescriptions, and you want to make sure that you're getting that VIP access, that front row access, then visit FrontRowBenefits.com and get a free quote. They're connecting consumers and businesses with the top level insurance carriers in the United States at discounted prices. Visit FrontRowBenefits.com. That's FrontRowBenefits.com.
This is the Alden Report.
All right. Well, my name is Mike Alden. We are here in Blue Vase Studios. And, you know, I say this every time. I'm always interested in interesting people. I'm always interested in people that are helping others. And if you've followed me throughout the years, if you've ever watched television over the past 12 years, you've probably seen me on television talking about the subject with my next guest. Well, my next guest, his name is Charles Clay. He is an inner peace coach and healer. He works specifically with pain. And we say pain, we're talking about it in the general sense, physical pain, emotional pain, and how to overcome that, how to really figure out where it's coming from and how to turn that around to make you kind of live, you know, the greatest life you possibly can. So I'm super excited to have him on. I've seen some of his stuff on Instagram. I've seen what he's doing for people. And, you know, he's just one of those guys that you just immediately just feel good just being around him. So please help me welcome Charles Clay. Charles, thanks so much for being here, man.
Such a pleasure and an honor. Appreciate you.
So, you know, I don't know if you knew this or not, but one of my main businesses, I've been selling health and wellness products for 20 something years. You know, we were part of some campaigns that really kind of blew the lid off of some of the world of health and wellness. And so I've been selling natural supplements, and I'm also an attorney in this space. And I really, I get it. I've been taking supplements and looking at quote alternative things my entire life. And I see a real benefit in a lot of this stuff. So tell me a little bit about your background and like, how did you start, you know, working with people specifically with pain?
Absolutely. You know, my story and initiation was, you know, getting to experience pain firsthand, and that unlocked some gifts for me. So that started 2008. You know, I graduated years before from Washington State, and then moved to San Diego to live the beach life as a trainer, health coach, and enjoying life there, but was certainly out of integrity in certain ways. Charles 1.0 during the week, trying to take on 10 clients a day, you know, burning the midnight oil. And then on the weekends, going out and overindulging in sex, drugs, rock and roll, all the things. And so fast forward, you know, the universe usually gives you a nice little feather of, hey, you might want to make some shifts here to come back into alignment with your purpose. And if we don't pay attention to that, then it's like getting hit in the head with a brick. That might be a nasty hangover, dealing with the consequences, and then, you know, might make a short-term change, but then we fall back to our old patterns. That was my case back then. And so I eventually found myself, you know, the equivalent of a Mack truck when we were in Mammoth Mountain. This was 2008 with two of my buddies, and it was a full-on blizzard. There was snow coming in every which way. It was so dangerous up there that they closed the lifts, but we're already at the top. And so we could barely even see a blur of a tree in front of us, and just said, hey, let's stay low and just charge. And so we were having fun halfway down the mountain. Friends are ahead of me, and all of a sudden I went off a jump that I didn't know was there. And I found myself in midair, just like tensing up, freaking out. Felt like I went off a cliff, and I don't know where the landing's at. And so when I hit, it was just this really painful impact, felt like a lightning bolt had hit my back. And I remember just yelling to try to get my friends' attention, but they were already in front of me, went down. I remember looking at my phone to see if I could call for help, and my phone was dead. And I just sat there in like a level 11 out of a 10 scale of pain, and was just in agony, and, able to channel that inner Spartan warrior in that moment and just click my board off and sit on it as far as I could slide down, and then keel over and take some breaths into the pain. And then eventually I made it all the way down the mountain just to go visit these doctors that gave me the bad news. And they basically showed me all these images, MRIs I took, CAT scans and x-rays showing how out of alignment and jacked up my spine was. And they're telling me that I might never move the same again unless I get surgeries, multiple surgeries, likely. And I remember even in a fight or flight state, like hearing that news, I'm loving this body. My background's in kinesiology, and so this was like the worst news I could have heard. And I remember just making a decision to choose a path of natural healing as opposed to going under the knife. And I was really glad I made that decision. It wasn't easy, but that took me down a path of really having to sit in a pool of all the emotions that I was trying to hide with the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. The shame of not being able to stand up straight, let alone get to work, the fear of maybe not ever being able to move the same again, and all these other emotions, is sadness buried under anger. And I finally, it was like my body forced me to sit with that and be with that and allow some of that to move. And in doing that, I gained some massive clarity and just had this epiphany, and, set an intention as I did a meditation for receiving all the answers to healing naturally. And during that meditation, a friend I hadn't talked to in 2 years reached out and texted me saying, hey, I heard your back's in bad shape. Check out Neurokinetic Therapy. And this is the work of David Weinstock, NKT. And so this took me down this rabbit hole that started connecting so many dots for me with my background and understanding how everything's all interconnected. And so I reached out to him, got in touch with him. And then one of his top students that was in San Diego at the time went and got my first session of NKT, and mind blown. I walked in there looking like Shakira stuck in a mid-hip dance move. Like my hip was over to the left, my upper body was to the right. I was a mess. And that was representative of how out of alignment I was with my purpose at that time. Over consuming, not sharing my gifts, talents, passions. And so this was all a blessing in disguise. And so she got me on the table, tested a couple muscle groups, found out that my glutes weren't even firing. And I was like, what do you mean my glutes aren't firing? I have huge glutes. She's like, yep,
Yeah,
no,
great ass.
all form, no function. And she had a good sense of humor. And so she had me clench my jaw and then retested the glutes, and all of a sudden they're back online for a second. So my body was just showing us that the neurological traffic jam was my jaw from the impact, and that tension, trapped emotions there was blocking the signal to getting to the big guns to help stabilize the spine. And we found a couple more of these compensation patterns, and we're able to clear them up. She put on these rubber gloves, and I was like, wait a minute, what are you doing? She goes, I know we just met, but I'm going to go in your mouth. And I was like, you're going to what? And she released my jaw, and it was so painful. But after that, I just felt this it was like all these muscles firing again and everything coming back online within my body. And so we did that for a couple different muscle groups, compensation patterns. I got off the table and I was like in alignment again. Felt like I could move again. And I gave her a big hug, and I was like, I need to learn this. I'm coming back every week. And I ended up studying all of David Weinstock's courses, got to work with him live and take all of his courses and become a neurokinetic therapist, and get to help share these gifts with other people that were experiencing similar back pain, neck pain, shoulder, knee issues, you name it. This was the common denominator with the physiological aspect of pain. And so that was a huge tool in my box that I was able to help a lot of people with, also avoid surgeries, kind of similar to my path, and help them realign with purpose. And I kept seeing a lot of the same common denominators. One, if they were temporarily feeling much better and then they'd kind of fall back into old patterns, there was something else that needed to change. And oftentimes there were some emotions involved that often get stuck as energy trapped in our system that can be considered as issues in our tissues. I certainly had my fair share of those. And there's no avoiding that. It's like accessing that, learning from it, going to the depths of those heavy emotions and allowing that to be felt. And on the other side of that, there's a deep sense of liberation, freedom, and frees up energy in our system. So people were having like miraculous effects from this, from addressing both the physiological and the emotional element, as well as the metaphysics involved. And this is the thoughts we think about ourselves, our actions, how we speak of ourselves. This is all interrelated to what's showing up in our body. And our bodies are this great representation of our subconscious. And so when we're experiencing pain, through this journey, I've been able to improve my relationship with pain and see it as for what it is. It's a teacher. It's like a check engine light in the car, right? Most people, if you get a check engine light, we're pretty good and diligent about, okay, pretty soon I need to, change something and go get this serviced. But when it comes to our bodies, we've been just conditioned or created these strategies of like, I'm experiencing pain, the check engine light, I better block it out with, anything from escaping to Netflix to taking pills to numb it to, alcohol, all the things that temporarily are like Band-Aids and aren't getting to the root cause. And so it'll just keep showing up over and over until we go to the source of it. And that's been one of the gifts through this path of pain to purpose, is discovering the root source of a lot of this. And in that, it uncovers a lot of these common denominators and deep generational wounds that a lot of humanity is moving through and experiencing. And that inspired the inner peace process, which is the quickest way I've found to releasing old subconscious negative beliefs that are still running in our subconscious and keeping us out of alignment with our actions towards our heart's desires. So we can dive deeper in on that, but I know it's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, I was about to say that's a lot to unpack. I'm taking notes, I'm listening, and it's a great story. I'm glad you kind of gave us that foundation so we can understand kind of your background, how you got to where you're at today. And as I'm listening to you, look, I'm sure this isn't the first time you've heard this. The stuff you're saying just sounds whacked out. I'm just gonna say this, right?
Sure.
But I'm a believer. Okay, I've like I said, I've done everything from colon hydrotherapy to cryotherapy to yoga, and I'm a practitioner of TM, and I take natural supplements. So we're on the same. You're speaking my language. A lot of people who are listening right now might be like, this guy's this doesn't sound real. It sounds just too far-fetched, too abstract, esoteric, and everything else we can describe it with. Now, I have friends, like I have one in particular, very close friend of mine, multiple surgeries, back pain. The back pain is just extraordinary. He's effectively been deemed disabled. He's my age, he's got kids, and his outlook is not good. He doesn't have a positive outlook, kind of on where his life is headed. And I have family members who have, chronic degenerative things like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. And if they're listening right now, and I'm sure they've looked for a lot of answers, and anybody who's listening or watching right now might be looking for all these answers. Can your method, or can the NKT work for them as well?
Absolutely. It's been astounding. I can relate to anybody that's skeptical or doesn't understand this, because that was me. when I first began this journey. I was like, nah, that's too woo-woo. It doesn't make any sense. And I was just pure logical mind and would go back to Band-Aids, just whatever to numb it out or to not feel it, or even doing was a strategy. Like, I just got to push through the pain and just keep working and stay focused. And that simply, anytime we're resisting, the pain is persisting. And the feelings underneath that we're trying not to feel, the underlying root cause of it. And so the beautiful part of having the courage to dive into that and begin this self-inquiry of how is this happening for me? And what are the lessons and blessings to learn from it? Then it begins to open up the doors to new possibilities of how this is happening for us instead of to us, because there's a big difference in our outlook when we're like, there was a point where I was in so much pain. I was like, I can't believe this is happening to me. And I was in this total victim mode, and that just prolongs the experience of suffering, whereas like, okay, I have a deep rooted belief that somehow this is happening for me, that I can discover. I know and I have evidence of that because every challenge that I've been through in the past has always, yielded these amazing gifts or lessons and blessings and so forth that have helped me on my path to purpose. And so this isn't any different. And knowing that while you're in it can allow us to like sit with it and remember that pain is energy, and energy is information. And so our body has some information to share with us. And so many of us just get so disconnected with our bodies. And I remember yelling at my back at times. I was so angry. And that's because I hadn't processed anger from when I was a younger boy, in certain situations. And so this was
all where it all comes from though, because,
yep.
Like, again, I'm a rational thinker as well. Mm-hmm. And I believe in a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. But is physical pain, is all physical pain tied to some sort of emotional pain? Well, first of all, you could have an acute injury like what you had, mm-hmm. and you're just going to suffer pain. Mm-hmm. But do you find, or is it a majority of the root causes of pain tied to some sort of emotional trauma?
Often. I wouldn't say all the time, but right. There's pretty much these three key elements that I address with all of my clients that have been really effective of getting to these lessons and blessings, how it's happening for them. And that's the metaphysics, what's going on in their world, in their life that might be out of alignment, right? And then there's the emotional component, which is unprocessed emotions end up as energy stuck in our system. Right. And it'll get poked and prodded. It's like the guy that's cutting you off in traffic, and all of a sudden you're in a fit of rage. Yeah.
Wait, did I say that out loud?
that human response is literally, again, happening for us. It's pointing to something that hasn't been resolved within us. And so that's what's beautiful about the inner peace process that I guide people through, is it connects the dots to the source of that energy. The first time you experience that anger, that rage, there's a certain flavor to that and experience behind that where you created some beliefs about yourself and they might not be true. And it's like, I'm not worthy of love because love always equals pain, or I'm not worthy of keeping those that I love around, because might be suffering from the abandonment wound. And so these feelings that we weren't able to feel or process at the time because we didn't have the tools, we didn't have the know-how, we're not taught this in school, that perpetuates, and then it'll get poked by, we can call them a-holes, but sometimes they're our greatest teachers because they know how to push our buttons. And that every time that's coming to the surface is an opportunity to actually process it and go to the source of it, to through this process, you can witness as your body finally metabolizes these trapped emotions. And it's remarkable because that frees up energy in the system. And then you can rewrite the story instead of this old narrative of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, love always equals pain, these type of stories that are running in our subconscious that are sabotaging our relationships, sabotaging opportunities in our business, our success. And so will keep showing up in our experience until we go to the source of it to resolve it. And so I would go as far as to say one of the greatest skills as an evolving human being is the ability to understand, identify, and be able to change these limiting subconscious beliefs.
In a second, I want to talk to you about resistance. Mm-hmm. Resistance to working with someone like you, or to embracing a new concept like NKT in just a second. Again, folks, if you're listening right now, if you're watching right now, and if this is you, if you have a loved one who's suffering with pain, pain is if you Google it, it's one of the top search terms on Google, pain. Mm-hmm. And having sold health and wellness products that work with pain, I know what it's like. We've sold millions and millions and millions of units of natural products to help people with pain. And, Charles came to me. I think I came across his Instagram, and I was just inspired by what he's doing. So if you'd like some more information about Charles, you can just visit his website. It's charlesclay.coach. You can also find him where he's really active on Instagram. It's charlesclay.coach. But he's worked on a special arrangement, essentially, for our viewers, listeners. If you actually DM him podcast, he's going to offer you 15 minutes of free support. And he's going to, kind of figure out maybe what's going on with you. And he's got a program we haven't talked too much about, it called the Inner Peace Process. If you're interested in that, if you're listening right now and you're like, you know what, I'm in pain, nothing's working, I've tried the drugs, I've had surgery, I'm taking prescription meds, I can't function in life, and I'm looking for an answer. Well, go ahead and send him a direct message again with IPP. I'll give you $200 off of his program. And look, he works with Olympic athletes. He works with just regular, ordinary individuals as well. And his story is remarkable. And you can just tell by listening, if you're watching right now, you can just tell that it's coming from a place of purpose and love as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FrontRowBenefits.com, connecting consumers and businesses with front row access to the greatest health insurance that the United States has to offer. Visit FrontRowBenefits.com. Folks, listen, if you're like me, if you own a business, if you have a family, or if you're an individual and you're looking for front row access to healthcare, maybe you're tired of your premiums going up. Maybe you don't want to pay those high deductibles anymore. Maybe you're tired of paying more and more for your monthly prescriptions, and you want to make sure that you're getting that VIP access, that front row access. Then visit FrontRowBenefits.com and get a free quote. They're connecting consumers and businesses with the top level insurance carriers in the United States at discounted prices. Visit FrontRowBenefits.com. That's FrontRowBenefits.com. So let's talk about resistance, right? Because when I say resistance, I'm thinking of people in my life that I know that are suffering with pain. And because I am a seeker of new things, or things that I don't necessarily know about, like, when we're talking about pain, years ago, before people even were talking about cryotherapy, now everyone's jumping in ice baths and stuff like that. I found a place and I did that for my own knee. I've done, like I said, colon hydrotherapy, which is a humbling experience. Just to see how my body would react. I've practiced yoga I'm a big dude. I did it for a long time, and so I do all these things to see what kind of works for me. And sometimes things work, and then you have these kind of almost these things, or these other different ways of dealing with physical trauma, emotional trauma, that might seem, like we talked about a little bit earlier, just a little too outside of one's comfort zone. But if someone's in pain and they've gone the traditional Western route, the pills like naproxen, or even the heavy ones like, oxys or whatever, they've had surgeries. What's the downside to working with you, and why is it? And I guess what I'm having a tough time asking the question. People who are in pain are usually in severe emotional pain too, as a result of the physical pain, or both, or coming the other way. But the ones I know are in really bad emotional states because of the pain, and they want to be out of the pain, but they don't do anything about it. That does that make sense to you? And
Yep.
why is that?
Yeah, it's, when we're in that fight or flight state, it's really hard to make heart-centered decisions. We're like caught in the head, and in the head lies our ego, which is always trying to keep us in survival mode, which is like, as a human being, don't walk off the cliff, don't walk in front of a car, like survival. And so the ego is like, I don't even consider it a bad thing. It's like our teammate in this experience, right? And that teammate is always trying to keep us in the familiar state of where we are familiar. And that might be super painful, suffering, and in terrible shape, but we're used to it and we know that we've survived there. So it's easy to fall back into those patterns. And so I think a lot of people can relate to, I want to make this big change in my life and I'm ready, I'm fully committed to this. And then boom, we fall back into these old patterns, especially when we're in this fight or flight state. So what's great is that
I'm going to cut you off. And you mentioned the term survive. And I've been talking a lot about this, where so many of us just survive and we don't thrive.
Right.
And so we're just, like you say, we're just existing just to stay alive. Right. And if you're in this physical pain, I think it becomes that much harder to then try and thrive. Like I'm thinking of a good friend of mine, and I think about where I, a knee injury or a shoulder or something like that. And I think about, I'm like, man, there's nothing compared to what my buddy's going through, and I love him and I want the best for him. And I've done, like I said, I've introduced him to all different things. And I'm definitely going to introduce him to you. And I think about how hard it must be to like you say, oh, I'm fully committed. I think anybody who's in excruciating pain would love, and they are, quote, committed, but I guess it's like, why don't they do it? Like, I mean, are you talking fight or flight, but why is it that someone who's in pain, like debilitating pain to the point where they literally can't function, and they've been to doctors, they've had surgeries, they're taking the prescription meds, they want to be out of pain, but why won't they look somewhere else? Is it just because they've been brainwashed to just traditional medicine and that's the only thing that's going to work? Or
it's a combination. And the deeper rooted answer, this is the reason that I ask people that I work with initially, do you want to heal this? And it seems like a very simple, obvious question, but it's really important that they are ready and intentionally wanting to heal this, because sometimes people have a payoff from their pain. And that might be they get the attention that they didn't have at a younger age in life. They get these sort of payoffs that are running in the background of like, oh, well, this is how I've always been able to receive love, is by getting help and support and attention from others, because I'm broken, or because I have this thing that prevents me from, doing the things that I want to. And so all that, again, goes back to some subconscious beliefs that are running. And so when some people are in that state of just want to throw in the towel and keep using the Band-Aids, and they're just like, well, this is as good as it can get, I guess I can't heal, then they succumb to that story. Right. And so there is so much to gain from hitting rock bottom like that. It's reaching that level of pain and then discovering the gifts and looking back and going, I'm glad that happened to me. I never thought I would have said that, but it helped me unlock these gifts that helped me take people on a deeper discovery of themselves. So
you help people. And that's such a great answer, by the way. And I'm glad you were able to answer my kind of long-winded question.
It's a great question.
And so that's one of the things that you specialize in, right? Because again, I just keep going back to, I think people who are in pain don't want to be in pain. They want to be out of it, but they don't know what to do. You work with individuals to help them get beyond that point so that they can, again, essentially start living again, right?
Right. So then as they start seeing, results, which can usually happen really quick when we start addressing some of the deep underlying emotional issues, the metaphysics, and some of the physiological aspects, all of a sudden shifts can occur at a really rapid pace. And then it's like the blinders are released. So there's just this huge door opening to new possibilities of like, oh, wow, well, yeah, I've always wanted to do this thing. I've always wanted to do a TED Talk or go, run a marathon, or all these things that were kind of just like put on the sidelines, our heart's desires, because we've been listening to the ego that's trying to keep us safe and keep perpetuating a Groundhog Day, the same experience over and over again. And so I'd say the opposite of that is our soul is in this human body home to experience it all, thriving the deepest of emotions, the full spectrum, and the highest joy, bliss, pleasure. And so we're not here to just play small. And so when you begin this healing journey, it can be very self-empowering. When you start to see results really fast, pain starts relieving when you do certain things that, it's like the check engine light. Oh, something needs to change. So you start asking yourself, how is this happening for me? What is this pain information trying to share with me from my body, and what needs to change? So those are 3 really powerful questions, self-inquiry, when you're dealing with chronic or even acute pain. And this can begin to open up doors of, then all of a sudden you're changing your reticular activation system. And I can share more about what that is, but this is our brain's ability to filter all the thousands of stimuli that are coming in every moment into what's actually important. So when you open these doors of opportunities and you begin to get results, then all of a sudden it's like you can begin following your intuition to, oh, here's a podcast that I got a golden nugget from, to try these 3 questions. And then that led me to, reaching out to this person that, I really resonated with for some reason. And then having the courage to ask for support, then it's like realizing, oh, wow, we're all in this together, and we're all like puzzle pieces of this, helping one another on this healing journey to discover more about ourselves, and then unlock more of our gifts, talents, passions, our skills that get to then help others in this journey. And that's the path to purpose. And everybody listening, you can think about some of your greatest challenges that you've overcame. Those initiations brought you some really powerful lessons and blessings, and a deeper understanding of yourself that's helped make and shape who you are today. And so this is what's available to anyone experiencing pain. So we can throw in the towel and be like, man, like you were mentioning, the resistance, we can just go back to the old ways, keep putting the same Band-Aids on, which then will eventually get painful enough that we have to do something, right? Or we can decide right now, like, I'm open to healing this for good, and I want to begin that journey. And then all of a sudden notice how, by setting that reticular activation, that intention to healing, what shows up in your experience. Signs, synchronicities, people that show up in your world will start filling in those puzzle pieces, and you'll gain some answers as to how this is happening for you. And so just to dial a little bit more on that, are you familiar with the reticular activation system?
To the point where I've heard people talk about it, but that's the extent of it.
real quick synopsis on it. It's really beneficial to know, because it's a phenomenon in our brain it's similar to a radar system, and it's happening all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. So if we're aware of it, then we can use it to our advantage. So everyone's experienced this. You see the first time you see the new, like, cool SUV blue Tesla, and you're like, man, that's the car. I want to be the only guy on the road driving that ride. And then now that's on your reticular activation, and reticular meaning retina, the lens at which we see our reality, our experience. Then all of a sudden, because you're interested in it now, you've turned your reticular activation onto that, and you start seeing it in a magazine. You're driving, you see like 3 of them on the road the next day. And it's not because they weren't there before. It's that now you've set your reticular activation to that. And so that phenomenon can be happening in a negative response too, when we're not aware of it. We wake up on the wrong side of the bed. We're not feeling great. And we're like, man, next time, like, this is going to be a rough day. And as soon as we declare that, this is tapping into the metaphysics, then our reticular activation is set on finding evidence of this being a rough day. So we stub our toe, getting out of bed, spill our coffee because we're ungrounded. Someone steals your parking spot or cuts you off. And these things just keep happening. Right. And that guy's a great teacher, by the way. And so this phenomenon can be used to our advantage just by simply being more intentional. And by doing that, I'll give a fun example. Like, I moved to Texas 2 years ago. So I had the honor of going to the closest place to hell that a lot of people would consider. You know what that is?
I don't know. Somewhere close to the border. I don't know.
The DMV.
Oh, the DMV. I was thinking heat when you said closest place.
Yeah. So a lot of people would consider that closest place to hell. It's this government building. Everybody goes in there and we're like zombies waiting for our number to get called, all these things. So I could simply go in there and be one of the zombies unconsciously, or I can set the intention for, I want to have some fun while I go into this government building and get my license. I want to see how many people I can share a smile with, share a laugh with. And before you know it, I'd get my number, drop into meditation. I start doing some yoga poses. That sparks up a conversation. The guy next to me has a knee brace on. And, I asked him, man, you've been kicking too much butt or what happened? And he said, nah, ACL injury. It's just taking forever to heal. And I asked him, have you ever tried meditation for healing? He said, no. I said, man, I could share the same one I use to help get answers to healing my back. And so I shared that with him, sparked another conversation. Before you know it, we had like 8 people, like a domino effect, elevated, laughing, having a good time in the closest place to hell, all because of setting an intention going into there. So I'm sure a lot of people have seen Patch Adams. It's another great example. The Robin Williams old movie, he's like puts on the clown. He's the doctor that brings the fun into the hospital. Same thing, right? Like super low vibration building. Everybody walks in there and it's just like, oh man, it's like draining, sad. Doesn't have to be, by setting your reticular activation with using the power of intention. So you can create more novelty in your experience. And I call it vacation vibration. It's actually that same spark that you get when you go to book a new novel experience. Like, oh, I'm going to go to Thailand and hang out on the beach and witness some live kickboxing, Muay Thai, like whatever that is that lights up your soul. That's not your ego. That's what wants us to thrive and expand and experience new things. And so as soon as you click that button and book your trip, you get this electricity in your system. And then when you go on the trip, it's like, it can help us activate our higher selves, we'd call it, where you're like super enhanced with your sensory input. You're like, wow, all this new novelty. You want to meet more people. You want to dive into the culture. It's the opposite of Groundhog Day, right? Of taking the tour from the ego. And so that expansion lights us up. And that's the path of highest excitement. And we can incorporate that same phenomenon, that electricity, into our daily lives simply by using intention and setting our reticular activation to, fun, to connecting more, to calling in your tribe, to healing, to whatever it is that your heart wants to experience, feel, or create. And this will shift realities. It is so fun to witness, clients and friends just utilize something so simple and small, and it's just a game changer and allows for so many more opportunities to arise.
Wow, man. I'm super excited that you were able to come on. Before I do let you go, though, I want you to tell us a little bit about, I briefly touched upon it. You have a program called the Inner Peace Process, where you work with individuals, basically kind of probably addressing a lot of these things that we talked about. Tell me a little bit about the program. How does it work? How do people reach out to you? Is it virtual? Do they have to come to you? Just tell me about the whole process. I'd love to hear about it.
Yep. Yeah, that is a virtual one-on-one coaching, and it's an 8-week journey. And the Inner Peace Process, I guide people through that. And it's a simple way to connect the dots to these trapped emotions that might be the root cause of pain, and where we initially experience those, so that we can go back to that experience and do some reparenting there. It's like being there for a younger version of yourself through a challenging experience, so that you can finally process what wasn't processed back then and is still being carried as energy in your system that weighs us down. It'll show up as the check engine light. And so that's a beautiful process, because interwoven in that is these decisions that we made about ourselves in those challenging moments as a younger boy or girl, that then keep perpetuating in our subconscious. This is the I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, all these things that cap our human experience or create self-sabotage behaviors in our current reality now, that all rooted from a younger version of us. And this is how we reparent that, bring in new information. It's like pulling weeds out of your garden, your subconscious, and planting some new seeds to a deeper truth. And this, people reveal and understand so much more depth about themselves, and you're able to supply love, support, and safety to the parts of you that need it most within yourself through this journey. And in doing that, man, the results are across the board. Like literally, I've worked with real estate agents that had just like, their bank accounts were plummeting, and they, couldn't get a deal to close. And this was a subconscious belief running, was that I'm not good enough. No matter what I do, it never works out. Right. So that was a belief running in their subconscious that was kept hitting these, they would make some success and then everything would plummet, and they're back in this fight or flight state. So by going to the source of that through this inner peace process, they were able to uncover where those decisions and beliefs were created, release those emotions that were trapped then. And then it opens up new opportunities, new energy, and new doors open for them. And all of a sudden, one of them was like the youngest, realtor in her whole region to get all these accolades for her newfound success in real estate. And it wasn't like she had this huge new marketing plan. It was doing that inner work that created and shifted her whole external experience. And so that's just one example.
It's not just, because when we think about, because we talked about when people think about pain, the first thing that is front of mind would be physical pain.
Mm-hmm.
But this is your process, the inner peace process is not necessarily about physical pain, even physical trauma. It's about unlocking their own inner kind of greatness, essentially.
Right. Exactly. And the inner peace process is an amazing tool that they gain. And then I give them, after guiding them through it a number of times and releasing these subconscious blocks, all of a sudden, some of the pain goes away. Their new opportunities are showing up. And then, it's like I give them a take-home version of it. Now you have this tool, that a step-by-step plan, anytime you're getting triggered by that guy that's cutting you off, by your spouse getting upset with you, whatever's being uncomfortable, it shows up in your experience. You can literally watch as your mind goes, oh, we know how to avoid that. Go on Netflix, escape from it. Go smoke a cigarette and try to numb it, or drink whatever your band-aids are. You can keep choosing those, or you can choose this step-by-step inner peace process, go to the source of where it was created in the first place and resolve it for yourself. And then what's really fascinating about that is, my biggest inspiration now, because I continue taking my own medicine, I still have to use this very often. And who inspires me most is my little girl, Sophia. She'll be 2 in May, and she is just such an incredible teacher of patience, of joy, of play. And every time that I choose to go to the source of what's triggering me, these uncomfortable feelings, anger, sadness, grief that I didn't deal with, and pain that's showing up in my body, every time I go to the source and heal it, that's one less generational wound or old negative program that needs to be carried forth and passed on to her. And I can't think of anything that would inspire me more, just knowing that by me choosing to end these generational wounds of abandonment, of, not good enough, of unworthiness, these don't have to be passed down to our children. We can literally resolve them now. And so it's super inspiring because that opens up just some really powerful and potent opportunities by doing this inner work. And that's, optimal health, as well as more harmony and peace within relationships. And so it's really such a gift and honor to be able to share this work, because I get to witness the transformation in other people's lives that can happen in such a short time, in a matter of weeks, that it's just profound. So it's truly an honor.
Wow, man, you are inspiring. You just your vibe, man. Like right when you started, you said you wanted to set the intention. You're the first person that's ever done that with me before. You're just everything about you. Your energy is just awesome. And if you're listening or watching right now, I hope that's coming across to you. It has to be, because it's coming across to me. I mean, I'm looking at them. I do have my 99-cent glasses on too, but
I love the shades, Mike.
Watching as well. And man, what you're doing is just fabulous. And I think again about people in my personal circle that could totally use this as well. And we've been on with Charles Clay. He's an inner peace coach and healer. If you've been listening up until this point, you can tell that this isn't something that he just thought up. This isn't something he just started doing. He's helping people all over the world, become a better version of themselves. If you're in physical pain, if you're in emotional pain, if you have a combination of the two, or if you just want to increase your performance, if you want to unlock your inner self, your inner power. Again, you came to me. I think I came across your profile on Instagram. I think that's how this whole thing started. Check him out on Instagram. His Instagram, I'm looking right at it right here. It's charlesclay.coach. He's got his family on there, but he's also inspiring. He's got some great videos as well. If you'd like some more information about him as well, you can just go to his website, which is the same thing. It's charlesclay.coach. You can put in some information there. But if you're listening right now and you're like, you know what, I want to give this a shot. I'm in pain, physical, emotional, whatever. I want to up level. I want to get better. Send him a DM right on his Instagram and just send him a DM IPP. He'll give you $200 off your initial consultation. Or if you just want to maybe kind of dip your toes in the water a little bit, he'll also give you 15 minutes of free consultation if you just send him the term podcast to his Instagram as well, which is charlesclay.coach. Look, man, I'm a believer in you, and I'm a believer in what you're doing. I've seen, people like you and the methodologies that you're talking about work for people. I think hopefully if you're listening, I feel like you've definitely done it. I think you've opened people's minds up to it. And again, look, you got nothing to lose by just sending him a DM with the term podcast or the term IPP or both, and just seeing if it works for you, because I think it will. So I want to thank you again for spending your time here. My name is Mike Alden. That's Charles Clay, and we'll talk to you soon. Today's episode is brought to you by FrontRowBenefits.com, connecting consumers and businesses with front row access to the greatest health insurance that the United States has to offer. Visit FrontRowBenefits.com. Folks, listen, if you're like me, if you own a business, if you have a family, or if you're an individual and you're looking for front row access to healthcare, maybe you're tired of your premiums going up. Maybe you don't want to pay those high deductibles anymore. Maybe you're tired of paying more and more for your monthly prescriptions, and you want to make sure that you're getting that VIP access, that front row access. Then visit FrontRowBenefits.com and get a free quote. They're connecting consumers and businesses with the top level insurance carriers in the United States at discounted prices. Visit FrontRowBenefits.com. That's FrontRowBenefits.com.